It's kind of an interesting system. Hey everyone, my name is Marco Brown and I own a law firm called Brown Family Law in Salt Lake City. We're here on our very first live stream. We are going to talk about the top 5 mistakes people make in divorce, the top 5 divorce mistakes. I've been around a long time, helped thousands of people at this point through divorce, and I've come up with these top 5 from talking to 10,000 people and helping about 4,000 people through the process. So we're going to start going through these in 1 second. And we are going to work through some technical difficulties here as well. It's like LinkedIn's not up. Anyway, okay, so let's start this out. Let's talk about the first mistake that people make in divorce. And the first one is being a jerk. My number 1 rule for divorce is be nice. Be nice to your soon-to-be ex. There are a whole bunch of reasons to do this, okay? The first is, yes, you don't like this person much right now, and that's fine. I can totally understand that. But if you have kids with this person, you are going to be intertwined with this individual for the rest of your lives, okay? It doesn't end when the kids are 18. It goes beyond that. You're still going to have to make decisions regarding your kids. You're still going to have to talk. You're still going to be kind of joined at the hip because of that for the rest of your kids' lives. Okay, so you don't want to be a jerk right now. You don't want to be terrible to the other person because you're going to have to live with that person and communicate with that person in the future for a long, long time. So be nice. Now, when I say be nice, what I don't mean is roll over and play dead. Okay, that's not acceptable. You don't need to do that sort of thing. But what I mean is just don't be a jerk, right, to your soon-to-be ex. There's absolutely no need for it. It makes negotiation harder. It makes litigation more difficult. Like I said, it really kind of ramps up the hatred that you have toward each other. It makes co-parenting more difficult. Everything. It just makes everything harder, and it's completely unnecessary. When you are a jerk to your soon-to-be ex, then your divorce is going to cost more. Okay, I mean a lot more, probably orders of magnitude more than if you weren't a jerk and you just got through the process, negotiated it, got out, and gone on with your life. So there is no good reason to be a jerk to your ex through the divorce process. So be nice. Okay, so that's my first mistake that I've noticed that people really, really make. Okay, number 2 here, scroll through. Number 2 is not knowing your financials. I cannot express to you how many times, and I've met with over 10,000 people at this point, talking through the divorce, child custody cases, paternity cases, guardianship cases. You cannot imagine how many people don't know the most basic things about their finances. People come in, I meet with them all the time, and people come in and I will ask them very simple questions like, how much money do you make? And they usually know that one. Almost everybody knows that one. Then I ask, how much money does your spouse make? And most people know that, about 2 out of 3, right? They'll know that the answer to that question. A lot of times they don't know the overall, and I'll have to ask them the hourly. Almost everybody knows the hourly, and then I can extrapolate out from there. And beyond that, people are not real good with their money. I ask what their assets are. They know they have a house. Maybe they kind of sort of know what their equity is, but they certainly don't know how much they have in retirement. They do not know how much they have in debt. They just don't know these numbers. And if you're going to go through divorce, you need to know your numbers. You need to know where you are. Are you going to be able to afford a good divorce attorney? Or if not, like what level of divorce attorney you're going to be able to afford? What do you fight over, right? When it comes to money, okay? How realistic is alimony? Because alimony here in Utah is based on income. So, realistically, what's your income compared to the other person's income? There's a large space for likely that there is going to be alimony awarded. Incomes. We have to know these numbers in order to be able to give people a good idea of where they stand financially and what their case is going to look like, what they're going to get in the end, at the end of the divorce. And if you don't know that, then it's extraordinarily difficult to put together a good strategy and hire a good attorney to help you out, and the right attorney to help you out to get you through that process. And the other thing about it that I've really noticed is when people don't know their financials, they are scared out of their minds to get divorced. So let's say that you are a lady and you have domestic violence going on, okay? If you don't know your financials at all, then you are scared because the person who is committing domestic violence against you, your husband, right, is going to tell you that you're not going to have anything, that he's going to keep all the money and you're not going to have anything at all when you get through the divorce. And you may believe that, right? Because you've been kind of conditioned to believe that sort of thing. But if you know your financials, if you know that your husband makes $200,000 a year and you make $25,000 a year, and you've been married for 20 years, then we're really looking at quite a lot of alimony. You know that if he makes $250,000 a year and you have kids, that they're worth quite a lot of child support. If you know that there are 2 or 3 properties, right, and we can split those up, then you're going to get some assets, or you're going to have a house. You know these things, so it's much easier to make the decision to leave in abusive situations if you know what your financials are. So keep that in mind. And just as a little quick aside here, if your spouse controls all of the financials and does not let you know what your financials are, that really is a form of abuse, okay? I don't throw that word around lightly, but really that is kind of marital abuse if you just don't allow your spouse to know what the numbers are. Because what you're doing, like the person who's controlling that information is controlling it so they can control their spouse, okay? And if you are allowing that to happen to you, then you're allowing yourself to be controlled and abused by your spouse. Now, sometimes one spouse just doesn't want to know anything about the money because they just don't care. That's like not how their brain works. And that's okay. You know, I get a lot of those types of people that I meet with because they just allowed their spouse to do everything with the money and to make all the plans because that's just not their jam. You know, they're not good at it. And that's okay. But that's different than having your spouse control the money and then not tell you any of the information about your money. If that happens, you have a serious problem. That is a serious red flag. Okay, so mistake number 2 is not knowing anything about your financials. Okay, scroll through to mistake number 3, not fighting for custody. And sorry, I couldn't get this all on the same screen evidently, but talking to you dads. I'm primarily talking to you. Okay, so people fight about 2 things in divorce. They fight about kids, they fight about money. They spend a lot more time and money fighting about kids than they do fighting about money. Because money, in splitting it up during a divorce, is really kind of a math equation, okay? Kids, on the other hand, are not a math equation at all. They are unique individuals, and we need to figure out exactly what's going to be best for them, and that is very, very fact intensive. So when it's very fact intensive, it's grayer, the area is gray, okay? And it's just, it takes a longer time and people fight more about that, right? And kids are just so much more important than your money that people are willing to spend the money and the time to fight about their kids and get this figured out and really try to do what's right for their children, okay? So what I've noticed is lots and lots of guys will talk about wanting 50-50 custody with their kids. And this isn't just about guys, but this is usually the conversation I have. So if you're a woman and this applies to you, then take the advice. But what I've noticed is a lot of guys come in and they want 50-50 custody. They, however, do not really want to fight for 50-50 custody, okay? Because in Utah, this is the best time to be a guy and get divorced and get lots and lots of time with your kids. By far the time. I started doing this, 11 years ago now. I came here to Utah with absolutely nothing. I had no clients. I had no money. Came back here because my wife wanted to get a doctorate. So we started this from zero. And back then, it was an okay time to be a guy and get time with your kids. Now is significantly better than even a decade ago, okay? Certainly better than like the 80s, into the 90s, which was super tough for guys.
Can I hand you this? Just so you
Sure.
can monitor TikTok comments.
Oh, okay.
We got about 150 people watching from TikTok right now.
Okay. Okay. I will try to do that. Okay. We are going to have a Q&A at the end. So bank, and I will try to get to some of those on TikTok and here on the live stream as well during the Q&A session. So lost my train a little bit there. Oh yeah, so significantly better than the 80s and 90s, which were really, really difficult for guys to get a significant amount of time with their children. Now is the best time. But getting 50-50 with your kids is still a bit of an uphill battle if you're a man in Utah. To be totally upfront about that. So what guys need to understand is that they need to fight for it. There's no other way around it, okay? And in future live streams, I'm going to give some tips for guys in order to get 50-50, but I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to tell you that if you're a guy and you want 50-50, you have to fight, okay? And you have to be ready to fight. I have this conversation all the time with my male clients that if you want this, I'm in this for you. We will do everything humanly possible to get you 50-50, but just don't give up. Right? You're going to give up now and don't waste the money. Okay. So what happens a lot of times is guys will get into the fight. And I call it the fight. That's not what I mean. They get into negotiation and their wife doesn't want to give them 50-50. So they say, well, you know, I'm really kind of okay with like 35%, maybe 30%, 40% kind of sounds good. And then fine, like they're adults. And if that is the decision they want to make, that's totally fine. And we will facilitate that. Okay. But the point here is that they give up on the 50-50 when it gets kind of tough. And again, I understand why people do that. I understand why guys do that. Sorry, I'm trying to turn on my computer here. But if you want 50-50, just realize that you're really going to have to go for it. And if you stop midstream and don't want to negotiate hard and don't want to farm, you know, it's almost going to be impossible to get 50-50. Now, here's the other side though. If you're a good and been involved in your kids' lives, you're with your kids all the time and you want 50-50, like we can help make that happen. Okay. That is a normal thing now, but again, you fight for it. So mistake number 3 is not fighting for custody of your kids. Okay. Mistake number 4 is believing what your ex tells you. Man, again, I've met with over 10,000 people at this point. So many people come in and say, well, my ex told me this, or my ex told me that. And it's almost invariably crap, okay? When your ex starts telling you things when you're about to leave them, they're telling you things, one, they don't know anything about, and 2, it's meant to control you, okay? So perfect example is, I'm gonna do this for both sexes. So women get a lot of ladies who come in and their husbands tell them, you ain't getting a dime from me. You leave me, you're going to be penniless. You're not going to get the house. You're going to get no money at all. There's no alimony. I'm not going to give you child support, nothing. You're going to take those kids and you're going to get screwed. You're going to get absolutely zero. Okay, that's not how the real world works. All right. That is a method of control that's meant to keep you around. Okay. So that's on the female side. The male side is more, okay, I'm going to leave you. We're going to get a divorce. And the wife says, hey, look, fine. I'm going to take the kids. I'm going to move to Florida. I'm going to move back home. You're never going to see your children. Okay. Take your money. That's cool, but you're never going to see your kids. Again, that's not how the world works. It's just not. And that is a method of control as well. It's the method of like, hey, stay with me, right? I don't want you to leave. They're lashing out. And that's understandable. Okay. But realize that that is just a method of control. So do not believe what your ex tells you. Your ex doesn't know anything about the divorce process. Even if your ex has been divorced before, I hate this, like, oh, he said that this happened, or she said that this happened during her last divorce, so it's going to happen that way again. Nope. Situations are unique. That's why you come in and you meet with a good divorce attorney and figure out exactly what's going to happen. You do not listen to your ex. And we get this as we're going through the mediation process and litigation process, that people will not listen to us. We will tell them something because we've thousands of people at this point, right? We'll tell them like how this is going to go. And then they'll come back and they say, yeah, I know, but my ex says it's going to go like this. Like, well, I don't give a crap what your ex says. Your ex doesn't know anything. Okay. So don't.
You got a couple of comments. I think they want you to answer.
Oh, okay. Tap the screen. I don't know how to
Interpret the computer screen.
Oh, the computer screen. Okay. Well, hopefully everyone can see this. Okay. But yeah, don't believe your ex, believe your attorney. Okay. You're paying your attorney $350 an hour, whatever it is, right? So believe your attorney. And if you don't believe your attorney, then just fire your attorney and believe your ex, right? But that's going to be a really bad thing for you. So do not believe your ex. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a bonus here. Don't believe your sister or your cousin that got divorced and got, $7,000 in alimony when their husband made $9,000 a month, or some such thing. People are simply lying about what went on in their divorce, and certainly don't go online and try to find stuff online about divorce. I can't tell. Like, I had to stop reading things online about divorce because it was so wrong that I could no longer fathom how wrong they were. Okay, I do this all day long. I know what's up. You need to go to a good divorce attorney and figure out what's up. Okay. Do not believe the stuff you read on the internet from random people. They simply don't have any idea what they're talking about. And if you have like crazy stories, things you've heard, like, share them. Totally fine. Like, I kind of like these stories. I just don't have time to intake them anymore. I did earlier on in my career. But anyway, okay. So don't believe your ex. That is mistake number 4. Mistake number 5 is picking the wrong divorce attorney. So there are lots and lots of divorce attorneys here in Utah and in the United States. There are lots of divorces in the United States. There are lots of custody cases in the United States, which means that there's a big supply of attorneys to help people with those cases, right? If you are a mergers and acquisitions attorney, there aren't a ton of mergers and acquisitions compared to the number of divorces, right? So there are correspondingly fewer M&A attorneys than there are divorce attorneys or custody attorneys. Unfortunately, what that means, though, because there's so many of them, is that you get attorneys who do a little of this and a little of that and some divorce on the side, right? So for example, here in Utah, there are probably, in our bar section, the family law bar section, last time I checked, which was a number of years ago now, there were about 800. Okay, we have about 12,000 attorneys here in Utah, 11,000, 12,000. And there were about 800 that did divorce. Okay, there are about 5,000 divorces in the state of Utah that involve an attorney every year. So 800 attorneys for 5,000 divorces. That means a lot of attorneys are doing 1, 2, 5, maybe 10 divorces a year. You know how long it takes to get good at something when you do it twice a year or 5 times a year, right? Family law, divorce, as a discipline, as an area of law, is incredibly complicated for a lot of different reasons. The law is complicated, the emotions are complicated, communicating correctly to people that don't know anything about the law is a complicated thing. Divorce is 2, 3, 4, 5 times a year. You don't have any idea what you're talking about. Okay, it'll take you 20 years to get good at this thing. So people just pick the wrong divorce attorney because they're picking divorce attorneys that don't do divorces that often, right? This is like, it's like going to a dentist who does 5 root canals a year. You don't want that. You want a dentist who does like 100 root canals a year, because then that dentist learns really super quickly. So what you don't want to do is pick an attorney that's kind of a part-time divorce attorney. You want to pick a divorce attorney who does divorce or child custody, family law, 100% of the time. And if they don't do it 100% of the time, like the lowest percentage I would ever go with, honestly, I would ever tell anybody to go with would be like 85%. Unless 85%, full 85% of their time is spent on divorce and family law, you should not hire, because they simply don't know what's going on. Okay, so that's one of those major mistakes that people make in picking a divorce attorney. The other major mistake that I'll go over with you is a divorce attorney who doesn't communicate well. So the number one complaint people have with attorneys in general and with divorce attorneys in particular is they don't answer phone calls, they don't return emails, they don't communicate the procedure or the process with their clients. They're just not responsive. So what you need to do is try to ensure that the attorney is actually responsive and they actually have a system for communicating with you as the client. So what I would suggest you do is when you go in and meet with an attorney, sorry, I'll turn the computer back on. What I suggest you do is you go in and you ask them, okay, so how do you communicate with your clients? And they're going to kind of stare at you. You're not really going to know what to say, most of them. But get specifics, like how often do you call them? What's the lag between when I contact you on email and when you return my email? What's the lag between a phone call and a return phone call? Like, do you have systemic communication that you engage in? And very likely they won't have any idea what you're talking about. So what we do here at Brown Law is we actually have systemic communication, which means that we call every client every Friday, and every Wednesday, the paralegals text every client. So we have 2 systemic communications per week with our clients. The reason for that is I just wanted to go through and solve this problem of not getting back to clients and not communicating effectively with them. Okay. So, and that is incredibly important because what it does is it puts us on the same page with our clients and helps get cases done much quicker. And we work on the same goals because we're just talking all the time. Okay. So it leads to better outcomes for our clients. That's what we found. That was probably the best thing I've ever done as an attorney, was to implement that system with our attorneys and our paralegals speaking to our clients constantly. Okay. If the attorney you're meeting with does not do something like that, then, maybe they're a great attorney, maybe it'll work out for you. But what I can tell you is the more the attorneys communicate with their clients, the more they explain the process, and the more they kind of walk through the process with their clients, the better the outcome is in general, which is why we do it the way we do it. So picking the wrong divorce attorney, not picking somebody who does divorce or child custody, family law 100% of the time, not finding somebody who systemically communicates with their clients, those are big red flags. Probably picking the wrong divorce attorney if you don't have those things. Okay. All right. Got a bonus here. Okay. So here's the bonus for you. Being reactive instead of proactive. Once you have decided you are going to get divorced, that is the time to be proactive. Okay. I'm just going to be straight up with you. So I actually dislike divorce. I wish I didn't have a job. Okay. I wish I just made like pizzas for people or cookies or something like that, because everybody likes the guy who makes them cookies. No one likes their divorce attorney. But I don't. I have this job because I want to serve people in a really, really difficult time in their life. And, that's okay. But what I've noticed is that when people, so what I'm saying, is that I don't want people to get divorced unless they absolutely have to. I turn people away because I don't want them to get divorced. But once you've made the decision that you are out, that you are done, then be proactive about it. Okay. Take a long time making that decision. That's totally fine. But once you make that decision, be proactive about it, because the more reactive you are, the more you allow other people to do things to you, the worse you do in your divorce on average. Okay. Because you're being acted upon instead of acting on other people. Okay. So that's the difference between reactive and proactive. The more proactive you are, the more you've decided, okay, I'm going to get divorced and I want these things out of my divorce. And I'm going to really work toward those things. And I'm going to do it every day. And I'm going to find a good attorney that's going to be proactive with me. Okay. The more you do that sort of thing, the better you do in your divorce. The more custody you're going to get with your kids, and the more money you're going to get out of the divorce. Okay. If you sit back and allow your ex to dictate things to you or to kind of run the process, then the worse you're going to do by a country mile. When you're reactive, you just tend to get screwed in your divorce. So don't be reactive, be proactive. Okay. Let's see if this comes back up. All right. So that is the bonus. All right. So we've got through our 1 through 5. We've done the bonus here. And then we probably have some questions, I would imagine. So we can go through those for a second here. So we'll do a Q&A. Okay. Do you see anything?
Yeah, I see one question right off the bat.
Okay.
It says, how can we find someone that will actually fight for us when we are first meeting the attorney?
Oh, that's a really good question. That's hard to determine. Okay. So there are a couple different ways you can go with this. You can go with, and this is the live stream and this is the TikTok, so I'm going to look back and forth between you. You go with somebody who is a bulldog, right, or a shark or something like that. You just ask around, like, who's the biggest bulldog. The problem with that is that when you get bulldog, shark, Rottweiler, whatever you want to call those types of attorneys, they tend to be jerks. And that can work on an individual level sometimes, being a real jerk as an attorney. Sometimes that gets you better results for your clients. But most of the time, over time, it doesn't. It actually gets worse results for your clients. Okay. And the reason why is judges, commissioners, mediators, colleagues, right, other attorneys, they simply don't like those types of attorneys. And they tend to not engage with them nearly as much. They don't negotiate with them as much. The judges know they're jerks and they can't stand them. So they don't buy they don't trust them, and they don't buy their legal arguments, because legal arguments in very large part actually, are built on trust. Like if a judge doesn't trust you as a human being and you make an argument and you cite a case, for example, then the judge is not going to trust that what you cited in the case is actually what the case says. Okay. So this is just the reality of being an attorney. And so that might work for you, right, if you're looking for that type of attorney. But I wouldn't, because on average, you're going to get worse results with those types of attorneys. So you want to ask the attorney, how are you going to handle this type of situation? Or how have you handled this situation in the past? That's a really good one. And have the attorney give an example of a situation like yours and see what the attorney did and see how aggressive the attorney was, and is that appropriately aggressive according to what you think, right? And is that person, based on that answer, going to do for you what you think is necessary and good in your situation? So that's probably the most effective way, is like, give me a little bit of a history of it. Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to go about it. So I'd ask that question of attorneys. Okay. You see any others?
Take a look through.
Okay. So I have one, as you're looking through it, I have one on here. How much does a divorce cost? I get this question all the time. The average divorce in the United States, if you're paying an attorney for it, so the average divorce in the United States, I think, doesn't actually include an attorney. People just kind of do it on their own, which is sometimes can be good and sometimes can be really, really awful. But if you're paying an attorney, the average is $3,000, which sounds crazy low. I get that. But again, most divorces, you're not really fighting over much. Okay. You're paying an attorney to do some paperwork. So the average is going to be, maybe 3,000. When you get into litigation, right? When you get into mediation, because there are kids, there are houses, there's retirement, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line, there are these really important things, then you're looking at more money than that. So our average for clients here in Utah, if we go to mediation, is about $8,000 to get you through the process. Okay. So we're taking care of your kids forever. We're making sure that everything gets done correctly. We're maximizing or minimizing alimony, depending. We're figuring out assets. We're figuring out debts. All these things are super, super important. So that's about $8,000 for a mediated case. And that's pretty much, that would be an average for us. If you want to go to litigation, if you actually want to go to trial, man, you're looking at significantly more than that, probably between $30,000 to $50,000 for a trial in our office. Okay. Now you can go to other offices and they'll charge you, 100, or I've seen astronomical numbers, but $30,000 to $50,000 for a trial, it would be a pretty normal number. But again, the average in America for a divorce, if you pay a divorce attorney, is going to be about $3,000 to the divorce attorney. We just happen to be more than that because this is 100% of what we do.
Nicole asked, how do you feel about divorce coaches?
I don't know what a divorce coach is. to be honest. I think, and I've had this discussion with some other divorce attorneys now, because we're on a whole bunch of forums, because I know a lot of divorce attorneys across the United States at this point, and they have asked about the divorce coach kind of phenomenon. This is a new thing that's coming up. None of us are big fans of it, because it seems like divorce coaches don't coordinate with the attorneys, and they're not attorneys. Like, they're just random people talking to you about how to get through divorce. I don't know exactly how they do things. I should probably meet some and see how they actually work. But it seems like many times they'll have kind of an adversarial relationship with a person's divorce attorney, which is not a good idea at all. What you want to do is coordinate. If you're going to have a divorce coach, somebody helping you through the process of uncoupling your marriage and actually getting divorced and like co-parenting and that sort of thing, then you want to get in with the divorce attorney and coordinate how you're going to do this for your client. That seems to make sense. But I've never heard of a divorce coach reaching out to an attorney in order to coordinate in that way. Now, we deal with therapists. Sometimes I will send clients to therapists, because the therapist or our client really does need a therapist to kind of work through some of the emotions of getting divorced, which is absolutely normal. And then when we do that, like, we coordinate with the therapist, say, hey, how are things going? Do you need us to talk to our client in any special way about these things? Like, what does our client need? We kind of get updates. Of course, we're getting releases from our clients, that sort of thing. But we're getting updates from our clients and from the therapist on how that's going. But we're coordinating with them. But I just don't see that in divorce coaches, because I think it's kind of a new coaching thing to make money, and they don't have any idea what the hell they're doing for the most part.
Laura Lindsay said, how do you get your ex-husband to stop buying expensive yachts and houses without your knowledge?
Oh, your ex? Well, if you're divorced, he can buy whatever he wants, right? But if you're married and he's doing that, I don't know. I mean, that's a form of financial infidelity, just like having sex with other people is a form of infidelity. And I mean, how do you deal with that, right? Like, that's a pretty difficult and transigent problem. But at some point in your marriage, if the other person just keeps spending money and putting you in the poorhouse, like, you have to be willing to leave that relationship if it's that important to you. And you need to have real sit down conversation with your spouse. Like, hey, look, this is like you having sex with somebody else. I can't take that. I can't take the stress.
She's not divorced yet.
Oh, she's not divorced yet. Okay. Yeah. So you're going to have to stand like, I can't take the stress. This is like you having an emotional affair or having a sexual affair. That is exactly how I see this. And if you keep doing this, I am gone. Like, you eventually just have to get to that point to show your spouse how important this is to you. I don't know any other way to do it. Now, you're in this situation right now. You're trying to figure out an answer for this right now. The best way to deal with this, honestly, is early on in your marriage, sit down and be on the same page about money, right? Like, how are we going to handle money? This is our budget. This is where we're going to spend it. The accounts are all in your same names and everything. You're working together as a married couple to obtain certain financial goals. Okay. And when you do that, then you rarely actually have this type of problem, because this type of problem is usually symptomatic of not being on the same page and one person just doing whatever they want. And most of the time that's been facilitated by not, getting together and talking about a budget and talking about a plan, those types of things. Now, look, I'm not blaming the victim here at all. I'm just saying that if you're earlier on in your marriage and you want to keep this from happening, this is the best way to keep that from happening. Okay.
Best advice for disagreement when deciding what elementary school to send the child to?
You're divorced at this point, I'm going to assume. If you're not, type it in. But yeah, let's assume that you're divorced and you have a kid, you live within, 10, 20 miles of each other, and trying to decide where to send that child to elementary school. Ugh. A lot of times the way we deal with this is we deal with it in the divorce process. We just say, okay, this is where the kids are going to go to school. Okay. Because if you share 50-50 or 60-40 or something like that, you can't live that far apart from each other. Otherwise, it simply doesn't work. 20 miles is my max. of living from each other if you're going to share 50-50. Because if it's any more than that, it becomes too difficult to get the kids to school on a daily basis. Get the kids to church, get the kids to activities, friends' houses, that sort of thing, right? We're humans and we like things to be easy. So you want to live within about 5 miles of each other if you're going to do a 50-50 or something like a 50-50. So many times what we will do is we'll say, okay, we're going to share 50-50 or 60-40, whatever it is, but the kids are going to go to these schools and they're going to go to the feeder schools of those schools. So we deal with these problems up front for our clients. If you haven't done it that way, then man, that's rough. Usually the kid is going to continue to go to the school where the kid went before the divorce was finalized. If somebody stays in that area, right, near that school, that's where the kid's going to continue to go. If not, and you've moved to a completely new school district and you just need to figure this stuff out and you live kind of far apart, you really need to get together and sit down and hash this out. Like, what are the numbers? Which is the better school? Like, you should probably go in and talk with the principal, maybe so both of you get comfortable with the idea of the child going to this school. Like, the more interaction you have and the more discussion you have about it, the better the decision is going to be. But if what it comes down to a lot of times is the school is closer to my house, so I want the kid to go to school there. I don't know. You're just gonna have to pick your battles. Like, is that important? Like, is the school there significantly worse than the school next to your house, right? I don't know. It's a tough one, and I'm not exactly sure how to answer that question. But really, the more discussion you have about it, the more you're sitting down, really trying to do what's best for your kid. Eventually, somebody's going to come up with a compromise to it, or somebody's just going to give up because they realize that there are more important battles to fight in the future.
Okay, Carrie said if the house was in a trust and then given to the daughter, does husband have dibs on it if they divorce?
I would need to know the source of the funds for the house. Okay, so let's assume a hypothetical. I don't know if this is your situation, but if you're married and you have a child and grandma dies or grandma's alive and puts a house in the trust for the daughter, okay, then very, very likely it's just the daughters and nobody's going to get access to it. Neither parent's going to get access to it at that point. Okay, so that's kind of, that's pretty clean. If the money came from the husband and the wife, it was put in a revocable trust for the daughter. And I always make this caveat. I'm talking about Utah law here. So if you're in Pennsylvania, this might be totally different, right? Like, I can only answer questions that pertain to Utah law. So this is kind of how the analysis I would go through in Utah. If the money came from the husband and the wife and you put a house in trust for the daughter and it was a revocable trust, then very likely in the divorce, you'd be able to get at that house, right, and divide it as an asset. Now, if it's an irrevocable trust to the child and there's a different trustee than one of the parents, then that's going to be essentially impossible to get to in divorce. So that's very, very likely to go to the daughter. So there are some nuances in all of this, sources, what type of trust, so on and so forth. But I mean, it's always going to be, it depends if you ask a lawyer a question, but that's a difficult question to answer, to be honest. So that's the best answer I can give.
Okay, Vivian, I've been separated from my husband for 8 years. How much and how long would a divorce take?
Probably not very long at all. We have had cases like yours, Vivian, where you've been separated for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, something like that. Almost always you completely and totally extricated your life from your soon-to-be ex's life, right? So you don't share debt, you don't share assets, you don't share kids at that point, you're not getting alimony, you're not getting any of those types of things. So most of the time it's really coming in and just recognizing that everybody is going to keep their own stuff and you're going to walk away from it. So here, in our office, we get that type of situation. That sort of case is probably going to take about 45 days. Many times in those cases, the actual toughest thing to do is to find the other person, because you just don't interact. Maybe you've been separated for 8 years. You might not know where he is, right? We have that happen every once in a while. So we have to actually go dig. We have to go talk to family members. We have to go try to get an old, phone number, old email or something like that, and track the person down to give them the papers. And often that's actually the most difficult part of it. But here, again, this is Utah specific, probably take about 45 days if we know where he lives.
Okay, Frank asked, what do you put into a custody agreement where you don't have to go back in front of a judge?
I'm not sure I understand that question. If the question is there a provision that you can write into your divorce decree that will preclude you from ever being able to go back before a judge to talk about your kids? My understanding is certainly the law here in Utah, but my understanding is those sorts of provisions are completely and totally unenforceable in the United States, because the best interest of the child is by far the most important thing. And the court has continuing jurisdiction, what we call continuing jurisdiction, over the child of a divorce case or a custody case, and that child's best interest. So you can't preclude the other person from coming back to court and saying it's in the best interest that this happened with the child, right? Because you can't do that sort of thing. I mean, maybe there's some jurisdiction, some state in the United States that allows that kind of stuff, but I don't think any of them do, to be honest with you. Certainly none in the states where I have any friends. They're divorce attorneys, and that's most states at this point.
Okay. When you move out of the country, can you still file for child support? I have mostly custody.
Yes, absolutely. So we tend to have, the United States tends to have international compacts, especially with Canada and Mexico. Those are very well developed systems for child support, and Canada and Mexico will have their own agencies within the government to help facilitate the transfer, the payment of child support between the United States and Canada, or between the United States and Mexico. So those are actually very well developed relationships. If it's, I don't know, like Venezuela, that's probably going to be tougher, because Venezuela can do anything, right? So they're not going to be able to facilitate it nearly as well. So I guess it depends on kind of where you are, but the United States does have international compacts with, I believe, most of the world in order to facilitate the payment and receipt of child support.
Greg asked, does 50-50 at a 60-40 rate make sense?
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
Yeah, sorry, bud. I don't know what that means. If you want to clarify it, then clarify it and we'll get to it.
Okay, Courtney asked, pending divorce with PFA. He has supervised calls with kids, but constantly asks to reschedule.
Mm-hmm.
I do for the kids, but I feel like she's taking advantage. Should I stop or let him be, or should I stop or let him for the kids?
You should facilitate it as much as you possibly can. And here, there are a couple of reasons for this. One, your kids are going to do better. Almost always kids are going to do better the more kind of interaction and time they have with the other parent, right? Up to a certain point. But really, kids see themselves as an amalgamation of both of the parents. And when they can't have contact with one parent, or they think that the one parent doesn't care about them, that's really emotionally difficult for most kids. I mean, some kids maybe not, but for the vast majority of them, yeah. Like, I would have been devastated as a child if my parents got divorced and I never talked to my dad again, right? Because I identified with my father. It would have been absolutely horrible. And if my mom had not facilitated communication between me and my dad, that would have stunted my growth. And I don't know where I'd be. That would have been absolutely horrible for a kid like me. So I'm of the firm opinion that you facilitate communication as much as possible. Now, I realize the other person's flaky and they never keep appointments, that can affect the kid as well. But unless it's incredibly inconvenient or you simply can't do it, I would facilitate it. Yeah.
Okay, Greg clarified this question. He said 50-50 time sharing, but 60-40 child support.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's going to be difference, and I can sit down with the calculator. I could tell you what the difference is going to be. But here's the deal. If you want 50-50 custody, but your wife is saying, I want more child support in order to give you 50-50 custody, that feels kind of dirty because you're trading money for kids, but this is the real world and that stuff happens. So if you really want 50-50 custody with your kids, but she wants child support according to 60-40, freaking pay it, dude. They're your children, right? Just pay a few $100 more a month. They're your kids. Like, get the extra time with your kids. We do that stuff all the time. So we'll say, okay, so this is the parent time arrangement, custody arrangement, but we're going to pay as if it were this custody arrangement. So that is very, very normal. But the thing is, trading money for time with your kids, like I would trade. I can't possibly imagine how much money to have more time with my children. So just pay it.
Okay. How to reduce high conflict between parties 3 years since the modification of decree was filed. It is a Utah case.
Okay, so there are a couple options for you. One is you can attend a class together. So Dr. Natalie Malovich, Ali Thomas does this as well. I'm closing my eyes because I'm trying to remember names here. I think in Utah County, they have a class like this as well. It's a high conflict co-parenting class. You go together and you learn conflict resolution skills. Like, you will learn basic stuff like how to write an email without calling your ex a whore, right? I mean, things like this that seems super basic, but for some people who really hate each other, they're not basic. But you get together, you engage in these exercises with each other, you learn how to communicate in a controlled way, and then you get through that class, and it's pretty successful. We've had people go through that. They really tend to like it. They tend to learn how to better communicate and interact with their exes. So that's definitely an option. If you need a referral for that, you can call our office. It's 801-685-9999 and say, hey, I need a referral to Dr. Malovich's or Ali Thomas's high conflict co-parenting class. We can get that information for you. Other than that, what's a way to tamp it down? It's really going to depend on the relationship you have with your ex. Some people just shouldn't be communicated with. Like, you're talking too much to your ex. So I tell people all the time, if your ex is, I'm just going to throw out a word and I don't mean it literally, your ex is sociopath or a narcissist or something like that, right? Like, you should probably just minimize communication as much as possible. So the way we kind of do that oftentimes is you trade one email a week. On Sunday afternoon, you write an email about how your kids did during the week, and your ex does that sort of thing. You just trade an email, but you're not texting each other all the time. You're not talking on the phone all the time, because people tend to say terrible things over text they would never say in person. Like, it's amazing. I've read tens of thousands of pages of text messages between divorced people and divorcing people, and the stuff they say is just terrible, right? And text somehow facilitates that. So in emails, you're much less likely to do that sort of thing. So sometimes we control the communication, and we control the frequency and media for the communication, and that really tends to help out. So those are two ideas.
Sammy asks, what do you do when your ex is doing parental alienation?
Okay, so this is a sticky one. Parental alienation. I'm just going to say this up front. Alienation happens in some form or fashion in every single divorce. Okay, so the idea that you are going to split up a household and take the child that is with one parent all the time and restrict that person's access to a child is, by definition, like the way I use the definition, is alienation in some form or fashion. Okay, so it happens in every divorce. It's inevitable. But then you have some divorces where parent consciously makes comments to the child, does everything in that parent's power to ensure that that child has a terrible relationship with the other parent. Okay, you can call it whatever you want. I know some people flip out about alienation and they say that a pedophile came up with the idea or some such thing. I don't know. But just take away the nomenclature then and say that, hey, look, every once in a while stuff like this happens, and one parent hates the other parent so much that he or she acts in such a way that causes the child to hate the other parent like they hate the other parent, right? That's what we're talking about here. And that doesn't happen a ton. Like on a really, really, I mean, it happens, like I said, alienation happens in every divorce to some form or fashion. But when it comes to the point where like the child just doesn't want to be with the other parent anymore, and one parent is doing it consciously, right, and trying to make that happens much less often than you think it does. I have been a divorce attorney for a long time, helped about 4,000 people through this process. I in my career, over the last 11 years, have probably seen less than 20 of those types of cases where somebody is actually like, they're really, really, really trying hard to alienate the child. So how do you deal with that? Ultimately, I've talked to therapists and psychologists about this. If that is the type of case you have and serious alienation is going on, the only way you can fix it really is to minimize the amount of time the child has with the alienating parent. So if let's say that you are a dad and you have 20% of the time and mom has 80% of the time, and mom is actively alienating the child against you, really trying hard at this, and it's a kind of a textbook sort of example, then what you got to do as dad is go in there, you got to modify the divorce decree, and then switch custody. That is really the only way to do it, because therapy, these types of things with kids in serious alienation cases is kind of ineffective, right? Because the kid can go in for the therapy for an hour a week, and then they're going to sit with that parent who's alienating for the other, I don't know how many hours in a week, 600 some odd hours a week or something like that, whatever it is. So that hour of therapy is never going to make up for the behavior of the parent, right? Like you got to actually switch the custody, and that's really difficult, and that tends to cost a lot of money. And again, you just got to realize, like, if you're going to do this is the fight you're going to have, and you need to be in it to win it. So that's it.
How do you combat a smear campaign and lies to court?
Oh, well, I mean, those are two different things. Lies to court, you have to show that they're a liar, right? So you do your best to prove that the things they say are incorrect, that they're lies. And this is what we as attorneys do all the time. So, we get protective order cases where they say, hey, my husband, my wife hit me on this day at this time, and then we can go in and try to prove the negative, prove that didn't actually happen. But that goes for, anything in family law. People will make stuff up, and people lie all the time in family law. And our jobs as attorneys is to try to get the best evidence together to prove that person is lying and show that they're untrustworthy, so the judge sees them as untrustworthy and will trust our client more. Okay, so that's about the best way you can do it. Smear campaigns probably refers to outside communication, outside of court communication, maybe telling your family that you're, this, that, and the other, you do these sorts of things, and it's just not true. I have no idea how to deal with that. That's one of the unfortunate things one of the fortunate things about the United States is we can say whatever we want. And one of the unfortunate things about the United States is you can kind of say whatever you want. So you just have to deal with that type of situation. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you can answer this, but how do you feel about Commissioner Loon?
Oh, no, I can answer it. So she cares very, very much about children, okay, and about doing what's right for children. She will sometimes get law wrong. She is a little bit hot-headed sometimes, and I think she would admit that. But she really cares, and she doesn't want to see you play games with kids. She doesn't want to see you harm kids. And she can get the law wrong because she gets emotional about things every once in a while. So, but commissioners and judges all get law wrong. Just how it is. So our job as attorneys is to deal with her particular way of doing things, right? And to let her see the law and the facts of the case. Okay. So that's our job as attorneys. But ultimately, I trust Loon to do what is right for children, because that is what she focuses on 100% of the time. And I know her, and I know how much she cares about this.
What happens when the spouse quits his job before child support is set?
Okay, so this is called voluntary underemployment. So it's the idea that if you make $100,000 a year and you don't want to pay child support, or you don't want to pay alimony, you just can quit your job, and then you don't have to pay child support or alimony. So nope, that's not how this works. So again, I think my mistake number 3 was believing what your ex is going to tell you. Exes will say this all the time. Dudes will say this all the time to their wives that are about to leave them. I'll just quit my job and you won't get anything. You won't get any child support. You won't get any alimony. You won't get anything. Nope, not how it works. So if you want to leave your $100,000 job to go be a bum in Ventura, like, good on you. You still have to pay child support. You still have to pay alimony, and you're going to pay at the rate that you were making. Okay, so if you had a $100,000 job and you quit, you're still going to be forced to pay alimony and child support as if you made $100,000 a year.
2L here. What qualities make for an effective family law attorney.
Okay, so 2L means somebody in their second year of law school. So, good luck to you, man. No, law school, I really enjoyed law school. I like being an attorney a lot. What makes for an effective family law attorney? Was that the question?
Yes.
Okay, so a lot of it, honestly, is a personality type. So you have to have a personality that allows you to deal with other people's problems and to let it go. Okay, so if you are the type of person that internalizes other people's fights, good on you, right? Good luck with that. That's really difficult to deal with emotionally. And you should probably not be a divorce attorney because you're just going to make every fight your own, right? And then you're going to be super emotionally involved in it and not objective and not legally objective about your client and about their case and about the arguments that you have in front of a judge. So if you're that type of person, probably go find some transact work where you don't actually have to deal with emotions, because that's, that might work better for you. If you can help people and problem edit and slide and you can go home and put that, compartmentalize that, and then go home and be with your family and live a good life and de-stress sort of thing, then, that's the type of attitude and that's the type of character that I see with good family law judges that can over the long haul. People will do it for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and they burn out. And then they go do something else. And they've helped people for a little while, and that's great. But then, they got to go do something else. Otherwise, they're going to have a heart attack. I see that a ton. But the people who stay in this field for a long period of time are the ones that are help people and want to help people, but they can also deal with their stress and compartmentalize what they're doing and go home and, love their families and just provide.
Might be the last question. We got about 5 minutes left.
Great.
X has majority, but he leaves the country and state for stand-up comedy job. How do I tell the court?
That he left the country?
That's all it says.
How do you tell the court? I'm not entirely sure you would need to tell the court that if you already have an order from the court. I'm not entirely sure. Now, if this is a permanent thing, if he's Carrot Tops in Las Vegas, but let's say that it's comedian and he goes to get a permanent gig in Berlin or something, then and it's on a permanent basis, then you're going to have to go back and tell the court what happened. But you do that by filing a petition to modify, saying, hey, look, the situation has fundamentally changed from the time we got divorced. And now my ex is in Berlin as a comedian and only sees the kid twice a year or once a year or something like that. But it's probably on a petition to modify where you're taking care of custody and parent time and adjusting those and adjusting child support all at the same time. Because if let's say you share 50-50 and then the other person moves and it goes to Berlin, then not doing 50-50 anymore, and you should probably adjust child support so you're getting some more support for your kid, right? So that's probably how you have to deal with it.
What factors does the court look at when one parent wants to move out of state with child?
So for Utah, again, states are different about this. Lots of states will let you leave and lots of states will not let you leave. Utah is kind of the not let you leave sort of state now. It was easier, 10 years ago to leave, but now it's really difficult. The factors, if one parent doesn't have very much time with the kids at all, okay, then less than say 30% of the overnights with the kids, then you're more likely to be able to move out of state with the child. Okay. Other factors they'll look at is do you not have a job here? You have a much better job, new state. Do you have family in the new state? Like, why are you going to the new state? Is it a pretext to get away from your ex, or is it because you actually need to and the child actually needs to go to the new state? Really, what's going to benefit your kid in the new state, right? And if that's going to be so much, that new state is going to be so much more beneficial than staying here in Utah and staying next to a parent or both parents, then maybe you got a shot. But what I can tell you is doing this, that's a very difficult set of circumstances to create, right? And convince a judge of. So what I tell people is you get divorced in Utah, you have to plan on the kids staying in Utah until they're 18. Okay, maybe we can make it happen that you can leave, especially if the other person agrees to it for some reason. But if we have to push it through the court, it's extraordinarily difficult, and it's probably not going to happen. So just plan on, if you're in Utah and you get divorced in Utah, the kids are probably going to stay in Utah, and you're going to stay in Utah with kids. Okay, all right. So Dylan tells me it's time to wrap up. Okay, this is our first live stream. It's been great. I really appreciate it. If you found value in this, if you want more, questions answered, then subscribe to the channels. We will keep doing these sorts of things. If you have questions, put them in the comments. You can, on whatever medium you're on, you can send me messages, and I will try to answer those questions. If and maybe it'll be part of the Q&A the next time we do a live stream. We're going to try to do live streams every Monday at 11 Mountain Time. Okay, so we'll be back next Monday, and we'll be doing many more of these. I really appreciate it. These are some great questions. But yeah, subscribe. If you need help with your divorce and you're here in Utah, give us a call. It's 801-685-9999. We're Brown Law, and I'm Marco Brown, and thank you for being here.